While we're waiting, should we read through the director's report or anything? Or is there anything we should look at? I guess look at the financials.
Can't really do it outside of a meeting, I think.
Okay. I just thought, because they're public information and they're out already, we could look at them, but we can't vote on them.
Yeah, I remember
To do that, yeah.
years and years ago on a school committee, we didn't have a quorum one night. I said, well, let's just have a discussion. So we had just had a conversation, didn't vote on anything, didn't discuss anything earth shattering, just had a general discussion for about a half an hour.
Here's Chuck.
And later on, I sort of got my hand slapped saying, if you don't have a quorum, you close, you just go home. You don't
Okay.
open, because you don't open the meeting. You don't. So, and I think we found out last time that we can open the meeting with a quorum, and even if someone has to leave, once you've opened it, you're okay.
Right.
All right. Hey, Chuck.
I'm here.
Hey,
Thanks,
All right.
Chuck. We needed you.
Figured you might.
All right, we have a quorum.
One,
Pat is there, right?
can you really see it?
Pat's there.
Yeah.
His still photos good enough for me. His audio's, there you go, Pat.
I'm here.
Thank you. All right, we have a quorum. I will call the meeting to order at 11:09. First item on the agenda is approval of the
Okay,
minutes.
normally you should be able to see it.
Thank you again, Joe, for a great job with the minutes. Any discussion or additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
Chuck has seconded it.
Who seconded that?
Chuck.
Chuck, I can't see it, Chuck, but I'll remember the voice.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye or wave your hand. We're not
Aye.
going to go through a roll call.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Public speak. Do we have someone who would like to speak about an item that is not on the agenda? Louise?
Yes, thank you. The usual, okay. Technology. Yeah, I've got something that is actually, I mean, you've seen I've been to one or two meetings lately just to see what was going on. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Good, I will never. And just to sound like the senior I am, I'm using AirPods in place of hearing aids so that I can connect it all.
That's fine.
So. Okay, and the first meeting I came to just out of interest at the very, and that was 2 meetings ago, at the very, very end, just as it was closing, and of course I can't speak except for public speak, Eileen commented that asked all of you to find more members, 3 members, 2 each, I forget, but more members for the board. And I wanted to share, and it's taken 2 months to get in contact, but I just had a pretty simple comment to cover this. I had submitted an application to the mayor's office by email, the way you're supposed to. And when I looked back, that was actually the very beginning of August. And it was that's not the only, I mean, okay, I'll just go step by step. I didn't hear anything. I assumed there were other applications further along the, down the pipeline. I personally had briefly had some ideas and all. It wasn't the end of the world and didn't think of it until, you know, I knew that. And then here I am coming to this meeting, wondering what you all do. And it's easy, it's accessible on Zoom. Anyway, and Eileen says that. So my first suggestion was just to bring that to your attention, because there may be other people there, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But just to let you know that this is what's happening with applications. And I've heard on the grapevine, it sometimes does happen. And the second thing I'm going to say, and this is a bit more difficult, having said that and to kind of recognize the elephant in the room, I do know some of the people here. You know me. I do have kind of a position or a theory that I would like to see the COA open to a wider demographic, more diverse, doing more things that were that didn't cost money. I've got a few ideas there. I suppose that's what inspired me. I'm very well aware that I might not be the kind of person you guys want on the board. So that, to be honest, that is not the point here. The point is, as sometimes happens in Easthampton, I didn't get any, I'm just giving you an example, or the experience that I got no response, nobody contacted me, nobody said we're looking for something else, however nicely it's gone into the void, and just so you guys might want to know that.
We don't hear about anybody applying till the mayor lets you know. Is that correct, Brendan?
Yeah, I haven't received any, notifications about people who've applied.
And so if I can just jump in, Louise, just as a matter of protocol, typically we wouldn't even respond to issues that are brought up at public speak because we might not be prepared to do that. It might be a case where, in other words, we don't get into a give and take typically, but in this case, as Eileen mentioned, and Brendan, I believe we can answer that pretty quickly. This board really has no control over the appointments. As you said, you went through the process with the mayor's office, and that's where it begins and ends. She might or might not ask us for any input. I have not heard lately of any applicants to this board. But again, this board, I was going to say technically, but not even technically, has no jurisdiction over appointments to the board, as it is with any board in Easthampton. I think to Eileen's point, we simply hear about it, I think, when the mayor sends a letter probably to Brendan and says, hey, so-and-so is going to be a new member coming on your board. I have no problem trying to touch base with the mayor just to see if there are applications that are held up because of an inability to communicate as rapidly as they would in the past. But I will follow up with the mayor to see where your application and or others might stand.
Thank you. And just very briefly, since protocol, I'm fully aware of all that. I wasn't asking for a response. I simply thought that this might be helpful. And I'll just comment. I mean, it wouldn't go to Brendan, it would go to appointments committee, which I think some people here probably know, and that whole rigmarole, which some of us have become pretty familiar with this summer in different arenas. So I simply thought it was information that you might want to know. I wasn't attacking you or saying you should have done it. I just thought it would be useful information you might want to know, and you might want to follow up. That's all.
Yes. Thank you for that. And I will follow up. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, Louise, that will probably mean that you would hear from the mayor's office, not from us. Hopefully that's the case. You will hear, but I will follow up with the mayor's office.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Louise. With that, we have the financial report. I know a lot of you may not have seen it in Brendan's original sending of this, but here it is on the screen. If you turn your head sideways, you can see it.
I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, I know, I'm Eileen. I gotta lean over.
It's okay, Brendan, as long as we laid eyes on it and you tell us everything's okay.
Yeah, no deficits. We're moving along. No issues.
Yeah, because we're about well, this is for November. Yeah, November. So when we see the December report in January, we should be in most categories no worse than 50% expended, I believe, right? That would
Right.
be halfway through the year.
Right. And you could see, and again, my apologies for being sideways. I'll have to correct that for the next one. But obviously the percentages, used so far in this column right here.
Yep.
On each one of the line items. So.
Perfect. One quick question about the budget. I did see here about the mayor's request for all department heads to make a 2.5% cut for the next budget.
Yes. Yeah. That is something that I'm trying to figure out which line item we'll be looking at for that.
So I'm sorry, Brendan, could you go back up, like what our total?
Yeah.
So roughly $25,600 is the cut. Am I reading that right?
So if we take 2.5 off the 167,608,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong column. Yep.
there should be more like a little bit over 4,000.
Okay. Yep.
We're gonna have to cut from one of the line items. And it is something that I'm thinking about now as we're getting ready to draft up. And of course, this is in response to, COVID and in anticipation that there may not be as much money next fiscal year. So we're going to have to just make some adjustments. It wouldn't be the first time that we've, for example, one of the items that I have looked at is, let me pull down the line item specifically. So underneath the clerical end, we've had to shift hours previously that weren't covered by the city onto our formula grant, which is something that we've done in the past. It's not unusual. We have other staff who are paid, but because we've had some staff who walked out from the COA because they were concerned about the pandemic, and given the fact that the two people who left here were seniors themselves over the age of 65, both of them were concerned, and both of those individuals were paid off of the formula grant as well. And I don't believe either one of those individuals has any, wish to return given our current situation. So there has been room that's been, opened up on the formula grant. So if we need to, I could essentially supplement 4,000 of our clerical hours potentially on that formula grant. We've done it in the past, maybe not quite that much, but again, with two people who've dropped out from the COA, staff people, I think we can accommodate that. So that's probably where I'll be looking to.
And I assume, Brendan, you can make that cut from multiple lines if you had to.
If I had to, the only line that I wouldn't be willing to budge on is the COA full-time permanent. This is the only other person in our department who's full-time. And I just feel like outside of that, everyone else is either 18 hours or less.
Yeah.
So it gets kind of tricky. It gets down to a skeleton crew at some points during the day. But I think that would be the only line item I'd be concerned about, just because of the benefits that come with that position. So, but I guess in the same way, we could be looking at potentially using the formula grant to pay for that position. But historically, the city has always paid into a full-time outreach position.
Yeah. So the good news, bad news, having probably one of the smallest budgets in the city of any department, 2.5% thankfully becomes a small number. The bad news is even a small number to this budget can be a big hit. So I don't know how much wiggle room the mayor's going to give you, but if she's going to hold fast to the 2.5 or potentially say 2% would be good enough for whatever. I'm sure you'll go through that process like you do every year.
Yeah, well, it's difficult to think of taking out $4,000+ from the budget. We've been able to work things, and I do have, if for whatever reason we ran into issues with local aid, the possibility of even looking at using some revolving account money to pay for some hours that weren't picked up by the city, or the formula grant, then we could approach that. I think there's possibilities. The thing that I just want to keep in mind is that the one account that is actually starting to, gain some momentum is the van account. And I think I included that. We can get down towards the very bottom. The reason why I'm slightly nervous about pulling money from that account is that eventually we're going to need to purchase a new wheelchair van. And what I would like to do is potentially see, maybe try to match whatever the city could put in. So I'm trying to keep that secure because I would assume that one of our larger wheelchair vans is going to be out of commission in probably the next 3 or 4 years, give or take. And I put in the capital improvement plan for it, but in the event that there isn't extra cash on the city's end and we can't secure a grant, that revolving account is there for maintenance that isn't picked up by the city and potentially purchasing a new vehicle if needed in the next 5 years.
I guess what I was thinking of too, Brendan, is, when I refer to wiggle room, I mean, 2.5% on the city's entire budget is a huge number.
Yeah.
So if for some reason we were, negotiating with the mayor over a couple of $1,000s, I'm not so sure that's going to make a big difference in her overall plan, unless she's hard and fast that every department's got to give up 2.5. But again, 2.5 on the whole city budget is tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So, if we're off a couple that we don't want to give up, I don't know that she's going to hold your back to the wall, if you will, for a couple $1,000s.
Yeah. I have no idea what kind of impact COVID is going to have at large, and I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that the city is going to have to find ways of compensating for this. And I don't even want to know what it looks like for, again, at large. I don't know. The impact is pretty overwhelming when you think about it. But
Yep.
wherever, if we can pull it off, and local aid isn't an issue, and I'll talk about that as we move along. But this fiscal year, we got level funded, which is fine because we were expecting otherwise. So we were able to, keep moving along at the same pace that we normally would. Next year, that's a big question. So I might see it not only on the city end, but from the state level, and then figuring out what needs to happen. And I'm hoping that we don't find out about the formula grant like we did this year, which was almost like the first week of November, we finally got information on how much we were going to be getting per senior. So that was a little nerve-wracking because we had no idea what was going on.
Okay, any questions at all for Brendan on the finances? Other questions? If not, could I hear a motion to accept the financial report?
I'll make a motion to accept the financial report.
Second.
Thanks, Eileen. Joe seconds. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Highland Valley, Pat, you have any updates for us?
No, we had our meeting last week, I believe it was, and we spent a lot of time going over our bylaws, or the bylaws for that organization. So that was pretty much the majority of the meeting. So nothing that I can really add other than some changes made to the bylaws over there. I did connect with Brendan to see if there's anything I could add to their meeting. And at this time, that subject that we talked about, Brendan, was not brought up. So I couldn't find a way to work it in at this point. So for now, there's nothing I can add.
Okay, thanks. And thanks again for serving on that board, Pat, representing Easthampton COA. Thank you. Executive Director's Report, Brendan.
So just a quick glance at stats from the last time we met. Outreach, we had a total of 129 unduplicated in the month of November for total duplicated services of 436. Transportation has slowed down considerably with the rise in cases, I can assume. We only had 43 unduplicated for a total of 282. So those are just a quick glance at stats for the COA in the month of November. And then if we're ready, I guess we can move on to old business, Tom.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So as you see here on January 9th, the Senior Tax Work-Off Committee, and I stress the importance of the work that's being done through this committee, just because we're really hoping that we can launch this, next year. But on January 9th, the Senior Tax Work-Off Committee will present their 3-year pilot program to City Council. And then listed below, just in case anybody is wondering, what will be presented to City Council. And Joe, if I get any of this wrong, just, correct me. But during the 3-year pilot program, obviously, it doesn't mean that these line or these bullet items here are going to be set in stone, but we wanted to just at least present a 3-year pilot program that City Council and the Mayor's office can weigh in on. So if you look below, just to get into it, and I asked Peg, if I could share this with you guys, and she said, as much as you can get this out, I would love it. So as it hasn't been presented, obviously, to City Council, just so you guys are aware what's going on with it. So the pilot would be from July 1st, 2021, going all the way to June 30th, 2024. We're looking at, for eligibility purposes, the taxpayer property owner must be 60 years of age or older and reside at the location that the tax reduction will be applied. The exemptions would be based or would be assessed during a fiscal year, July 1st through June 30th. Applicants must be the owner of and residing in or the property for which the tax credit is sought. The amount of property tax reduction on the taxpayer receives under the statute is not considered income or wages for the purposes of state income tax withholding, but taxpayer may have to declare the amount received from the Senior Tax Work-Off Program on the federal income tax forms. So we're looking at a maximum exemption of about $1,500 per property. And of course, that would be based on, well, here we've got a calculation of 111 hours based on the minimum wage currently. And then the income limitations, we, Joe, if I'm correct, we use the Housing and Urban Development's guidelines for financial.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So we tried to, I think it was kind of a smart idea to model income eligibility based off, obviously HUD is got a number of programs, and I think at least gives us some kind of baseline as eligibility goes. And I think there are a lot of people that we currently deal with that may be in or below that $61,760 per year. So, and it's obviously higher than some other programs. But I think the big part here, and this is something that I had mentioned at the committee, is the idea of really focusing on, and you'll see on the last line here, the financial impact each fiscal year for the city. This section right here is 18,000 reduction in tax lien. So if we if we can get the number of taxpayers and then break it down per household, even at 18,000, I think most people probably, if you're looking at overall money in the city for tax overlay, it probably wouldn't have that much of an impact, right? But I think it would be better to clarify how much it would just cost each one of our taxpayers in the long run. So that way it would even be broken down into smaller units where people could say, oh, okay, whatever the case may be. I've got to get the information to find out how many taxpayers there truly are in Easthampton.
Brendan, you're referring to how much it would impact
the individual taxpayer.
the rest of the taxpayers that are paying for the reduction.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and just from some of my experience with taxes, again, very, very limited, I think the impact is like a rounding error. I mean, if you take $18,000 and spread it over all the taxpayers,
Right.
that's basically what they're going to do. They're going to take $18,000 and spread it over every household that's paying taxes. I think it becomes a pretty small number, if I recall.
Right. And we can see, like, in the pilot program, we're aiming to 8 to 12 participants to start off with. And I think, and Joe can, add into this, but I think having that higher amount because you can adjust that. 1,500 is the maximum, but I think when we're looking at some other towns and communities that may have a $500, a senior tax work-off
Right.
amount, the incentive might not be there for some folks.
Yeah.
But I think at $1,500, it's a little bit more appealing probably to some people, because that's a significant amount taken off your property taxes. But yeah, so I don't know, Joe, if you have anything to add. If not, no big deal. But I just wanted to bring up what's going to be brought to City Council on January 6th.
Yeah, Tom,
Yeah, go. Sure. Joe.
just, you've probably, or people have probably noticed that we call this a pilot program. And that's because a lot of these parameters are subject to being adjusted depending on what we find from the experience. So none of this stuff is set in stone, really. So we can tweak the program so that it has the best possible effect.
So Joe, just a couple of quick questions that come to mind. One is, it's pretty easy for a married couple on Social Security to be under 61,000 in annual income. But they could be sitting on some significant assets, retirement funds, whatever. So does it solely look at income, or does it ask for any information about assets?
I hear. I think that's one of the challenges, that we've got seniors who are asset rich but income poor.
Correct.
And the 61,760, I think, is going to be looking at all kinds of income that are available. And that would include things like IRAs or 401ks, but I guess we haven't really come to that bridge yet. So we haven't decided how to handle situations like that.
And I'm also wondering if there's maybe some type of, because I'd have to go back to the statutes and just take a look at what the state is requiring of this program. And I don't know if there are certain things that are exempt. And that's something that we can certainly discuss at maybe the next senior tax work-off meeting. But I don't know if by law we can ask people for, I don't know. I'm wondering like how that looks if you ask people for bank statements and stuff like that. We've done it for programs that offer less of a benefit for this, like for sure. But that would be something we'd have to discuss, and whether or not that falls in line with what the state has set in place currently.
Yeah, I'm coming at it from the standpoint, Brendan and Joe, that virtually every married couple on Social Security is probably making this number or less.
Yeah.
So just looking at this number, you qualify, but they could be sitting on millions of dollars in retirement funds that they draw from occasionally whenever they need it. Granted, that flows into income, but they could easily stay below the 61,000. And even if you just looked at a tax return for verification, you're still going to see something at 61,000 or less. But again, with Charles Schwab or something, they've got multi-million dollars in retirement funds. It just doesn't seem
Equitable.
Yeah, or appropriate for those types of.
Well, if they got multi-million dollars, they probably won't be applying for the program.
Well, you never know,
You
Chuck.
never know.
Chuck, how they say about the rich get richer, right? So,
Right.
I mean, this looks pretty attractive to me. My only other question, Joe, is was the city working separately on coming up with what it is the folks would do for work to qualify for the program?
Yeah, that's going to be the department heads within the city who will sort of look at, and that's part of the presentation on January 9th, for department heads, is how do you determine what work is appropriate, or how do you identify work, stuff in your department that could be done. I mean, people, and it's going to be a matching process between, the possible jobs that are out there versus the skill sets of the people who come forward and apply for the program, if somebody's just doesn't have a skill set that's needed, or if everybody's got the same skill set, then there's going to be much more competition for certain jobs.
Yep.
Whereas let's say, for example, in the town of Wellesley, they have a municipal lighting plant, and a retired electrical engineer, volunteered for the program, not knowing that they had a lighting department, and basically they pulled the guy in, paying him minimum wage and getting, that sort of professional engineering experience.
Yep.
So in some cases you can get really high level, talented people, but a lot of it depends on what skills people are bringing to the table, and what the demand is within the city departments.
Yep. And I'm sure the department has to make certain that there's real value to whatever work it is the person's doing.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. And Brendan, you can talk to this too, but I'm sure if you're a department head who says, I have a job here, then it's going to be more than 2 hours and we're done.
Right.
We're looking at something for, 111 hours over the course of, 8 or 9 months. So.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, thanks for that update. Any questions for Joe or Brendan? Thanks. Okay, Brendan.
All right. On December 2nd, I met with Alan Wimett and Nancy Mathers. Alan Wimett, if you don't know him, he's the executive director of Highland Valley Elder Services, and Nancy Mathers is their nutrition program director. So she is she's responsible for overseeing the Meals on Wheels that we talked about at our previous meeting. So when I met with them, I think one of the overall messages that I got from Alan was that the reimbursement rates are not matching up with the 2 communities who are currently running this service.
Mm-hmm.
And so they find that, that Southwick and Amherst may have to come up with alternatives and find additional funding because they're not getting the reimbursement that they think fits the program needs. So that means they've either had to turn to additional grant funding or ask the city for additional funds. And given what we know from the budget letter that was put out from the mayor's office, I don't think we're necessarily in a position where we could start requesting money for a dining site coordinator. And also, and I think I mentioned this at last meeting, is that our pay plan scale right now doesn't include or doesn't define a position like this, not on our pay plan system. COA is operating on the same pay plan system that 50 Payson has. There's a different pay plan system for the school and of course, public safety and all of that. So I think, when we're looking at our descriptions and what's currently defined, there's nothing like that. So now we would be looking for additional funding to cover that because both towns that are currently running the program have had to have a dining site coordinator because we were told, I was told by Alan and Nancy that the administrative part of it, you definitely want to have a position like that created before you open it up. So I don't know if just between volunteers, helping us with meal distribution will be enough. They're saying that it's most likely we'll need a dining site coordinator who's been trained, in food safety and all of that. So I don't think, and it's open, Highland Valley has said that it's kind of created a weird dynamic between them and the 2 towns, Southwick and Amherst, because there are differences. I think Highland Valley sees their reimbursement as very tight and they can't be flexing much, and the towns just aren't seeing it that way. So it creates this, different dynamic. From what I gather, I think Highland Valley is trying to move away from communities necessarily running them just because they're working on such razor thin margin. But yeah, so I'm probably going to put this to the curb for now, just because I feel as if based on our conversation, it's not the appropriate time to be looking at that, because I think it would have to be considered and also placed into the city's budget, which is due in, a little bit over a month and a half. So But I did talk to them directly, and we'll probably put the pause button on for now for the Meals on Wheels.
I think that makes perfect sense, Brendan.
Mhm.
All right. The other
Okay.
thing is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, just the other, even the smaller things to think about, often the thing that Highland Valley identified as a problem is that normally they're, for all the other 22 towns that they service, they determine eligibility for the Meals on Wheels program. So we would then take on that responsibility of determining who fit the parameters. And they haven't expanded the Meals on Wheels guidelines since the pandemic. I think that's happened at some other, elder service agencies, but that hasn't happened with Highland Valley. So they said, you're often having to work within very strict guidelines in a time where people are sheltering in place. And people may consider themselves homebound, but because we're working off the original guidelines of the Meals on Wheels program, it is very, very strict. It does not include isolating for the pandemic. So
Okay.
there'd be a lot of people who probably say, yes, I'm homebound. And in many ways, I would agree with them, but it's still federal guidelines that are being put in place on that. So we can't open it up and, we'll have to turn away a lot of people. So they said that can be kind of a headache, as in the sense that you're going to have a lot of folks who are, defining themselves as being homebound, but actually don't fit the definition of it. So, but yeah, so for the time being, it's being put on the back burner. Maybe we'll see how next fiscal year goes. I still think there's importance. It's really important to know what's happening with these folks who are currently being served under the program. And like I had mentioned, I think at the previous meeting, I think Southampton would also be combined in this area, the Meals on Wheels program. So we may be responsible for not only our town, but one other town. And so that would possibly be part of the deal.
Okay.
All right.
New business, Brendan.
Yes. So the Helping Hand Society has been incredibly generous and has given the Friends of the Council on Aging, has always given the council, or Friends of the Council on Aging, that is, emergency funds. Historically, we've done $300 maximum benefit, whether it was to fill someone's oil tank, get a prescription medication, but because, recently they had given the Friends, I forget what it was. I think it was an additional $3,000 on top of what we normally would get. And I think total right now in our emergency funds, we're looking at, I'll double check with Ray on this because he's the treasurer of the Friends group, but I think we're looking at over $6,000. And I know that what the problem that I'm concerned about is the fuel assistance. We're not, the maximum benefit has been cut compared to last year. And I don't know how nasty the weather is going to get this year, but we thought about increasing it to potentially $500, just a couple $100 more. But given that some benefits may have gone down, we want to make sure, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for heating. The emergency funds has always been left open for, a number of things. We've paid, a little bit of rent, or we'll, again, pay for prescription drugs if someone's in the coverage gap. And so we will keep an open mind as to, these cases that come in, but we're thinking about increasing it to $500, especially in a time where people are most likely going to be struggling, whether it's food, heating, you name it. So we're thinking about that and obviously doing it on a case-by-case basis. But without the assistance from the Helping Hand Society, we wouldn't be able to make this program possible. And so I think, we're aiming at that because we know that there are going to be many of our folks that are struggling to get by this year.
Brendan, on average, how many people apply per year?
I would say on average, we have, usually around like 10 or 12 people apply a year. We don't publicize it because it's not like we have, endless funds.
Right.
So we haven't we haven't put that out there, but certainly we use it when we're dealing with outreach. So if someone comes in, it's never just one issue that someone has. If they are seeking outreach services. Maybe it starts off as, oh, I'm having issues with my Medicare plan. Well, I'm sure that they probably have issues elsewhere.
Yeah.
So we usually screen out for that. But yeah, so I would say probably between 10 to 12 people a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Sounds good to me, Brendan.
All right. All right. So one of the first things for the budget for FY22 that was due last week was the capital improvement plans. I may need to revise this and talk to Jennifer Gallant because, as I found out from Jamie over in the city planner's office, if you could see here, one of the areas of our building that is starting to have issues is our loading dock. The picture is tiny here, but you could see there's significant rust, and these metal pieces are breaking off the actual foundation of our building. And what I'm nervous about is if someone, when we do reopen, and that is looking like March, maybe even longer, my concern is that when people do pull into our parking lot, there's a metal guardrail that's hanging off. It's slightly coming off the building. Someone could easily catch their bumper on that and then rip off a side of their car. So, and just in general, the integrity of the building, it's just this area is a problem here. I am currently working on an estimate through a company out in Woburn that focuses on loading docks. Again, I don't think, this is the second year I've submitted a capital improvement plan. Last year I put in for the wheelchair van, but again, that's 5 years out, or now 4 years technically, that I have it set up for, but I just wanted the city to be aware that this may be an expense that's coming down the road. But again, these capital improvement plans, they're not set in stone and they can easily be rejected. And one of the issues that I realized that I'm going to have to revise is I put free cash and also CPA funding, and Jamie told me that technically CPA funds cannot be used for restoration or maintenance of a building. So I would have to be possibly looking at either grant funding and free cash. So I don't know what that'll come down to, but CPA I cannot use for this purpose. So this section right here, 8, is not going to be involved in the project if it is approved. The other capital, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah,
I got a question. How much are you? And I'm looking at the. Maybe it says there cost $3,000 to $4,000 for that. Is that what that was? That's what you're estimating.
Here, I'm still waiting for the estimate. So this part, I am still waiting for an estimate to come in through a company that specifically deals with this. The 4,000, and it turns out that it's a little bit more, would be for the next capital improvement plan down here. So again, this picture is small. Oh, Pat got kicked out. Hold on, let me get him back in. Pat? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I hit something and cut myself off. I don't know how I did that. Sorry.
Did you catch most of what I said, or?
No, I only caught that you were in the process of still trying to figure out how much it was going to cost.
Yeah, so the guardrail that's on our loading dock, I'm still waiting for the estimate to come in. The 4,000 would more or less be for this next. You can't see it because you're calling in, right?
Yeah, no, I can see the picture, the share. I'm on my phone, so.
Oh, okay. So this part,
Yep.
also the loading dock, where
Yep.
not only do we have the rust damage on this guardrail here and the cement's breaking away from the loading dock, but also this whole section here is old paint that's just chipping off.
Okay.
Building is just, this side of the building is just in need of some maintenance.
Okay.
And again, just to make sure that everybody is that I'm clear on this, that CPA can't be used for this either. I put that in hopes of that, but city planning has informed me that this doesn't qualify as well. So.
Okay. Right.
So we'll see what comes of that. I think over time, I'll probably be submitting more capital improvement plans. This building is old, and I feel like probably in the next decade or so, probably going to be looking at a considerable amount of issues that are happening in the building here. It's just, whether it's the water systems below, we've had issues where some of the piping below our building has backed up. We haven't been able to successfully find what it is that's causing issues, but the end result is we're getting large sums of water that build up in our window wells. So I think, there's a lot of different areas to look at. This seems to be a little bit more probably within reasonable range, the loading dock that is, but the building is in need of some renovations, but we'll see if we can get approval on either one of these, or maybe none at all.
The part, Brendan, about the building being old, and you said the next decade or whatever, I mean, obviously within that time frame, there's at least a possibility that we find a new home with the surplusing of the old schools. Who knows what might happen with Whitebrook? I'm sorry, with the Pepin School. That's probably the most attractive to us. I do know what's going to happen at Whitebrook. It's going to be a pile of bricks. But
Right.
Pepin School obviously is a possibility. I don't know. In a range of 1 to 10, I don't know where we would place that possibility. But the bottom line is it's a possibility. So I think these requests are fine. I'm not so sure that in the next year or so, the city's going to consider anything major to the building unless it was, threatening to shut the building down totally. But, I don't know what'll happen in 22 when those buildings are surplused. It's a potential that we benefit from that somehow.
Yeah, I think, I'm not 100% sure, and this is, city planning, this is their world here, and I don't know where the mayor stands, but when we attended the meetings that were happening over at the school with city planning, it seemed like the renovations of those buildings alone was probably enough for the city to shy away from it. I don't want to say that that's for sure, but it just seemed like it would be quite a bit of cost to renovate the spaces that are in those two buildings. So I don't know if they're willing to look at that, but it just sounded as if it would be quite a bit of money.
Yeah, I guess all I'm suggesting is until that door is totally shut, they might slow play any major improvements to this building.
Right.
Hey, Chuck, maybe you could get Cernak Buick to donate their building to the Council on Aging.
He's all over that. Chuck will work on it.
Yeah.
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 It's a good idea.
Looking at your desk.
Okay, Brendan.
So I just wanted to, this had come out at the first week of December, but the Massachusetts Council on Aging put out their projections for the 2020 US Census. And so they went in and made this spreadsheet and broke down town by town, what we might be expecting for a 60 and up population. And so again, US Census drives our formula grant. So we were really, hoping that a lot of people would participate in the 2020 US Census. So as you can see here, if their estimates are accurate, because our formula grant has always been based on for the last 10 years that is, has been based on the 2010 US Census, which put our population of 60 and up at 3,505. But with 2020, it looks like we'll end up with 5,212. Now, what that will mean, if we get $12 again next year when this census data will be used, we would be jumping up almost an additional. So right now we're at 40, just a little bit over $40,000 in the formula grant. This would bump us up into the 60,000 or additional $28,484 in local aid if we get the $12 per senior amount. So that I don't know. I doubt we're going to get $12 per senior, but at least now we have a little bit more of a realistic count of elders 60 and up in our community. So that's pretty exciting news. I was
Yeah, that's great.
Drop on it, and MCOA managed to get their hands on some preliminary information as of right now. But it's exciting to see that we'll be dealing with a whole new group, a whole new population. And really quickly, just to go over some events this month that we're doing, some of the bigger things. This is the second month now that we're offering the SUNY e-painting virtual class. We had a wait list and we ended up delivering, so that happened yesterday, yeah. So we ended up delivering all the art supplies to people, and we had a full workshop. It went on for an hour and a half, and in that class, if you guys aren't familiar, the SUNY painting is using a variety of different brushes and rice paper, and they were focusing on botanical images yesterday, so it was kind of cool. I saw a little bit of it in the process. Tomorrow is our holiday meal, and so Big E's has generously, as always, donated. We're going to be serving 80 people Yankee pot roast. They were gonna do prime rib, but they didn't think it was going to hold as well, and I know that we've done that in years previous. They've always been, incredibly generous towards us. They're an amazing neighbor. That would be my only gripe about moving out of this building, is not having them as a neighbor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we're very, very fortunate. It's likely that we're going to be out making deliveries tomorrow. Like I said, there's 50 different households that we'll be going to, and the rest will be picked up here at the center for folks who didn't want a delivery. We had one snag, though, in all of this. So entertainment was the Ray of Elvis. We just found out yesterday, initially it was supposed to be broadcasted not only on Facebook, but on our public access channel through Easthampton Media. And we were just contacted by the director, Jen Ramsey at Easthampton Media, that they cannot broadcast music because of copyright issues.
Oh boy. So
we found out that we can't use the public access channel, which, there's a lot of our folks on who signed up for this event that do use Facebook. But, for those who didn't, we were relying on that public access because we know that many people will turn to that, channel 191, I think it is, to view in on some things that are happening. But so that kind of came out of nowhere. But, hats off to Easthampton Media because they've made a lot of stuff happen for us. And I know that Jen felt bad about it, but I think they have to do what they have to do. And they discussed it as a board, I think just this week on Monday night or something like that. Or yeah, was it Monday? Or no, it must have been last week, late last week. But anyway, she had called us to let us know that. So we're going to try to get out the information as much as we can. You don't have to be on Facebook to watch a Facebook Live event, but still, it's kind of a huge blow not having the public access channel available to us. But we'll make do, and we're again very happy to have Big E's helping us through this. So anyway,
Brendan, do you think you could just put directions in writing how they can access it through Facebook and have that on paper and include that with a meal?
Yeah, that's actually a great point. We have, we are working on that. Actually, Jenna, our outreach worker, is putting a little note with the link to it. It'll be the meals we had to cap. I specifically capped at 80 because Big E's is sponsoring the entire thing, and I didn't want to go over the top. I think 80 is quite a few mouths to feed anyway. Right. And I know that he's always been happy to do it, and we've served above that in some years. But I just, wanted to be mindful and not, go over the top with, meals. But the concert's available to anyone, and we will be putting a note in there with the Facebook link, just explaining to them that, unfortunately, at this time, we're not going to be able to use the public access channel for this concert. So.
Okay.
And then this week we have a class on, I've never heard of this before, but our activity coordinator found it, Bel Tota's inspired bird ornaments, which is kind of a cool concept. and that class is filled up as well. So we're kind of working with the Massachusetts International Council on the Arts, I believe is the name of it. They're out of Holyoke. There's a number of instructors who've been approaching us, and so I feel like their classes have brought in people, and now we're actually getting full participation, and in some cases even a wait list. So I'm hoping that this continues because we're down through winter. You know, the only thing that we're going to be able to do right now as far as activities and events is essentially, you know, virtual classes. But what I'm hoping is that once we hit April, we're going to go really heavy on outdoor events once we're out of the official cold. And yeah, some dates in April might be, you know, kind of bad weather as well. But I figure in April all the way until, I don't know if we're probably, and this has been mentioned numerous times, we're probably going to have to continue to focus on a combination of very, very small groups coming in here when we do reopen, and then trying to really encourage outdoor activities in the spring and summer weather. We're just gonna, even when we open, I think that's gonna be our goal just because of the population that we're working with. We do not want large groups of people in here, you know, potentially spreading, you know, COVID.
Okay. Thanks, Brendan.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that, and again, I think probably towards, you know, maybe in February, if there's a couple of board members who may want to look at, you know, this reopening. It keeps on getting postponed, but again, keep that in mind, that it would be nice to maybe have some board members participating and looking at reopening and what it means.
What you looking for?
So.
You're kidding.
Brendan, have you heard anything, you know, talking about COVID and the vaccine? Have you had any discussions with folks in regards to the seniors getting vaccines or the ability for it to be available?
I haven't had that discussion yet. Currently, what Easthampton is doing is trying to find a place to adequately store vaccines. And so I think the fire department has the type of refrigeration that's needed to hold the vaccines. But I think obviously police and fire, and rightfully so,
Right.
directly with people, are probably going to be the first. But I don't know what it means for you know, seniors necessarily right now. You know, obviously they're, you know, they're prioritized for sure out of people from the general public, but you know, I haven't had any specific dates or ideas as to when that might be able to get distributed for folks.
Okay. All right.
So just a couple things real quick. Brendan, you were famous last month, I believe it was. You were recognized. Can you just fill it in for those that, I only caught a portion of it, unfortunately. I wish I knew it was coming. But Channel 40 recognized you, I believe.
Yeah, so there were a number of our participants and clients who had called in for the surprise squad, which was very, very nice, and we're very thankful. When it was originally presented to me, it was this idea that we would be just doing a segment on senior services in general. And so that was kind of a unique experience for sure. I think I've heard of them loosely. I usually get all my news directly from my phone, so I generally don't watch the news. But yes, the surprise squad came here. And one of the things that I just have to really put in there, you know, it was weird because it was oddly focused on me, and I couldn't emphasize enough. And of course, some of it was edited, but none of that, anything that we've done so far and the stuff that our clients, you know, thought were amazing, that the reasons why they nominated us for the surprise patrol, it was, you know, because we have an amazing staff here. You know,
but they have an amazing leader.
Well, yeah.
Well,
I have a lot of issues surrounding. First of all, you know, being the center of attention like that is totally blew my mind. It's a weird thing. It's hard for me to swallow, but anyway, I appreciate the kind words, but again, I cannot emphasize enough. I've had people who've been willing to go outside of their job descriptions to do random things for people who are are just in a pinch. And, you know, those small things add up, and I'm very lucky to have a strong, flexible staff, you know, here. And it's just, I'm very grateful for what they've done.
So Brendan,
Go ahead.
so for somebody who does watch the news and has seen those before, I know it's hard for you to swallow that or take that those kudos, but they were very, very well deserved. And that's all that segment is meant to be about, is the person that really deserves the kudos. They totally get, like, there's a team effort, and I think you are probably the same, like, of the 20 I've seen over the last year or so that they do. I bet you every person that gets recognized does the exact same thing you're doing right now, which is, oh, geez, really? I don't really need this. I don't really want this. But it's just a small token from, somebody. So I, appreciate it for what it is. And just, we get it. We all get it. And I thank you again for all you're doing over there.
Thank you. You know, the funny thing to all of that is Gary Romhande was here, of course, and they donated money. And I didn't realize in the moment, because so much stuff was happening, that, and it's a fake check. It's just for display, but it had my name written on it. Being a city employee, I immediately, after I realized what had happened, I was like, whoa.
Right.
I pulled them aside and I was like, listen, guys, I'm a city employee. There's conflict of interest laws. I can't take any money, and it turns out that it was just a gift card. And I checked in with City Hall about it, and we gave the gift card over to the friends so they can use it for events that we may sponsor on down the road. Money 1 month, but it was funny because the second I got off the camera, like, oh my God, the optics of me standing in front of the check with my name on it just looked horrible. So I think they had mentioned in the segment about it being donated to the center, which is where
They did.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
They did.
Good job.
So just for the record, because this is a public meeting, I did not get that.
So we'll get that in the minutes.
Right.
And the last thing I had was, Eileen, I believe this is your last meeting.
It is.
Yes.
Oh,
So
sad.
thank you so much for your years of service. I know you're still going to be involved in and about town and other things. So please don't be a stranger.
Nope.
I will
Thank you,
say
Eileen.
You're welcome.
not to make Eileen feel bad, but that puts us down to 5 members, which is the exact number we need for a quorum.
Yeah.
And Pat Wojcik was not able to be at the meeting today, so we would not have had a meeting. So I only bring that up not to make Eileen feel any worse, but to put the burden back on us to try to dredge up some new membership out there.
Right, and you're going to contact the mayor to see if we have any open applications?
Correct.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Okay.
I will do that.
All right.
All right. Thank you all very much. Our next meeting is January 19th. I would take an opportunity to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate. Thank you very much. And I would need a motion to adjourn, otherwise we can't leave.
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks,
I'll
Pat.
second that.
And Eileen, second.
Thank you, Eileen.
You're welcome.
Well,
Yes,
everyone in
thank you
favor
very
of
much,
adjourn-
Eileen.
Everyone
My
wave.
pleasure.
Everyone approve that, Joe, for the minutes. Again, thank you all.
Bye.
Have a great holiday.
Happy
Thank you,
holidays.
everyone.
Brendan, thank you.
Happy holidays.
Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.